Now, could we see the country's crippling power crisis be kept under stage 4 blackouts? Power utility Eskom says it has brought another unit of the Gile power station back on load, adding a further 8,000 megawatts, or 800 rather, to the grid. Last month, Unit 3 of the power station returned online, meaning both units are now adding about 1,600 megawatts of power to the grid. Minister of Electricity Dr. Ramokgopa has reiterated that the end to load shedding is actually closer than we think. To unpack this, I'm joined by energy expert Mohamed Madhi, just to tell us what he thinks. First of all, Mr. Madhi, obviously this is great news. Another 800 megawatts back on the grid. It's not something that we can take lightly, right?
Right, excellent. And, we have to give credit where it's due. So it's good. It's also good that it's ahead of schedule. And, with both of these units operating, we'll now have 1,600 megawatts. But we also just need to keep a little bit of perspective. That is just over 3% of the installed capacity. We have times when the grid is only 50% or thereabouts available. So there's still a huge ground to be made up in order to meet the requirements that the country, has at present. Notwithstanding what we need to keep economic growth where it should be. But, just taken for what's happening right now at Gile, I think it's great news.
And of course, looking at the fact that this happened earlier than they thought, can we say that government is working harder, at least to make sure that the situation is fixed?
I think government is definitely working harder. There's never been much doubt that there's a huge amount of energy and initiative being undertaken. Whether it's always correctly guided or, focusing on the right things is a completely different question. But there certainly hasn't been any lack of activity on the part of government to try and do something about this. It could be done a whole lot better, but as I said, that's a different issue. And also, giving credit where it's due, if we look at our regulatory system in this country, and if we look at what we're allowed to do as the private sector, it is very liberal. It's probably the most liberal on the continent and one of the most liberal in the world. So we have very few constraints from a legal and regulatory point of view in terms of building private power plants. Of course, those constraints come in the system, and those bottlenecks in the system need to be removed.
I'm just wondering, Mr. Madhi, how much of this has to do with the fact that Eskom did receive some reprieve from the Department of Environmental Affairs when it comes to some of the pollution emissions that it's supposed to follow, the sulfur dioxide that was going to start coming out while they were busy with Gile, etc. Obviously, we know that there are civil society organizations that are against this. How much of what we're seeing now is because of the reprieve from the Department of Environmental Affairs?
Well, it certainly had something to do with bringing forward the timeline when some of these units could come on stream, because otherwise it would have taken a little bit longer. So that has helped. Of course, the underlying fact is that these units were now ready to produce, and they got to that point. But undoubtedly, those environmental factors that you mentioned have played a role as well.
And how much of the fact that at the moment, we heard from one energy expert saying that, she confirmed rather that Eskom's current unplanned outages, the unplanned ones, are about at 30% compared to last year, this time when they were at 34%. That's only a 4% reduction in 12 months. Is this positive? I think South Africans are quite anxious anyway when it comes to anything Eskom.
Yeah, and rightly so. Look, we are at the time of year now where load shedding is traditionally not that much. The 30 to 34%, I think, is within, your sort of allowance of variability. It should have been better, given what we have coming on stream, given all the private sector generation that's going on. So it's not something to be overly pleased about at this point that we're only at 30%. The big concern for me is going into the summer, into the hot summer, the long hot summer. We're going to have one of the hottest summers on record. That is what is being predicted, which means that the grid is going to be probably crippled, probably under severe pressure because of the temperature and the weather. And so the real test is going to be in January. Don't forget, our first bouts of load shedding happened in January 2008. So that's going to be the real test where the system is and how much the system can handle right now.
At the moment, there's a summit that the electricity minister is attending in Cape Town. It has to do with green hydrogen and trying to make sure that South Africa, as a country, is still appealing to investors. Is this something that you think we can convince international investors on, looking at the kind of crisis that we've had in almost 2 years now?
Look, green hydrogen will have a role to play, and we have to take the long-term view. And we have to start putting in place the policies, the initiatives, the projects, start doing the development to ensure that we're ready and that we have green hydrogen as quickly as possible. But unfortunately, it's not going to solve the load shedding problem in the next 3 to 5 years. Green hydrogen is a long-term play, medium to long-term play. We have the right conditions in this country, absolutely. And I think it is commendable that the private sector and government in this case are taking a lot of actions, undertaking a lot of initiatives to progress the green hydrogen initiative. But let's not kid ourselves at the same time. It's not an answer to load shedding in the short term.
All right. And very quickly, my last question to you, Mr. Madhi. Another reason behind the reduction in load shedding, right, is definitely because many households and businesses have moved to solar. South Africans are relying less and less on Eskom and the grid, right?
That is true. So let me give you some numbers with regard to this. The private sector at the moment probably spends in the region of 2 billion rand every quarter installing solar systems and battery energy storage solutions. And I'm talking of the large-scale industrial and commercial battery energy storage solutions. This is taking a lot of pressure off the grid. At the same time, it's creating some pressure, at the moment, straight after load shedding, with some of these batteries have to charge and so on. Those are issues that can be overcome. So you're absolutely right. Solar is helping. It's the way to go. And what has really helped in this regard, again, is the battery energy storage together with the solar and the government incentives behind this. So for those that are not aware, for businesses that are not aware, there are fantastic government incentives right now to go solar, not just for the individual at home, but for businesses. And they've been taking advantage of those. Those that are aware of it have been taking advantage of those incentives.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for your time here on eNCA. Mr. Mohamed Madhi, an energy expert, talking to us about what this might mean. But I think you and I can both agree that an extra 600 megawatts of power back into the grid from Gusile since September is not bad news.